only there was a strategy to make a strategy. Holy moly, how good would that be? Well, in this episode, I've got the answer for you and the solution. I'm going to show you how to add strategies to your MetaTrader5 trading bot that you've built with Python. I think you'll love this episode and it's going to add a ton of value to your trading bot build. Now, there's a couple of things that you need in order to complete this episode. Firstly, you need a working MetaTrader5 terminal because that's where we get the information from. And I really recommend you check out the previous episodes that I've been showing you how to build the user interface and some of the other foundational bits and pieces of information you need to make the strategy work. And finally, I've been thinking recently about building a course that uses the information that I share here, but in a way more detailed way. I'd love to hear from you how much you think I should charge for it and what sort of topics you'd like me to cover. That'll really help me to know how to shape it and do it moving forward. Of course, all of the money will be used to either pay myself as a creator or to continue investing into the TradeOxy platform as we make it awesome. Anyway, let's get into the code. In this episode, we're going to be taking our user interface a little bit further. Here's what we're trying to achieve. So we go ahead, do our standard options, add in this in our time frame. Now what you'll probably see here is that we've added in an extra button, which is our strategy. And right now we're just going to create a very, very silly strategy that just shows you how it works before we go in a little bit deeper. And when we push data, it's going to give us an idea of what it wants us to do, to buy or to sell. And this is actually pretty exciting. So there's not a lot of user interfaces changes here. In fact, it's pretty much exactly the same as the previous episodes. What we are going to be doing is a lot more work in the background. So let's get into it. And a quick note, I've recently been really strongly considering creating courses that allow people to do this a lot easier, maybe a lot more in-depth coding and that kind of stuff. I'd love to know if you'd be interested in this and really how much you'd be prepared to charge for it. So please join the Discord that's linked in our thing and just let me know, because that'll really help me and it really helps me continue doing the things that I love to do as a creator. Okay, let's get into the code. So I'll quickly go through the user interface only because it just adds a bit of completeness. Normally I just do these as two separate episodes, but this is quite a straightforward change. So the only real change is in this get data function. And what we're doing is we add in our strategy variable and we just follow the same pattern that we've used before, which is check for the variable. If it's not there, return an error that tells us, hey, you haven't selected the strategy. And then this function here, we now go to our strategy router and then we go ahead and get our information, whereas before we just got the raw data and printed it straight to the screen. So to make it work. And just by the way, if you're ever going through the GitHub repository, you'll see that I keep all of my episodes nicely ordered there so that you can go through and you can get them. These will be changed to episode 4 and episode 5, and then this will become episode 6. So here we are, we're in our appdata.py and we've added in this function here to go and get a strategy router, go ahead and get the information from our strategy. So here's what this looks like. First of all, you need to create a file here called strategy_router.py. Then you also need to create a folder called strategies, and as you might guess, in there is going to be where all our strategies go. In a future episode, we'll also be creating some really cool stuff with indicators, but we'll get to that shortly. So here's what you need to put in your strategy router.py. This is effectively the file that will route to all the different strategies that we have. I'll just move that out of the way so that we can see the code a little bit better. Sorry, one moment. Just pull that up. There, okay. So here's how it works. From strategies, we're going to import whatever strategies you want to use. Right now we've just got a silly test_strategy. You see how silly that is in a moment. And then we go into our routing. So here we're going to do a whole bunch of error checking, make sure that everything is working before we try and get the strategy. And that's really important because these errors feed back into our user interface, which make it really straightforward for you to figure out if something's going wrong. So we check our inputs. We've got platform symbol, time frame, strategy name. We've got our comments there. Comments are super important for our code. So that's, we make sure we do that. Then we have here, if our platform is none, tell us that. If symbol is none, time frame is none. And then if our test strategy is anything other than something that we know about, then raise an error. That should be pretty straightforward. Now we want to go ahead and go in here and figure out what we're going to do. So here we have the ability to get our signal. So signal is equal to testStrategy.runStrategy, and we have our inputs platform, symbol, time frame. As we get more and more strategies, we'll just keep adding them in here. We won't go through it in this episode, but eventually we're going to expand this strategy router to be even further, to tell us what to do and get the buy and sell signals from our strategies. For now, I'm just going to show you how to go about doing the simple ability to get a signal of some sort from our strategies. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. So to get our test strategy, we go back to our file structure, we go to strategies, and we're going to open this test strategy.py. So this will be something that you create. You can call it whatever strategy you want. So here's our test strategy. So we're going to use our helper function. That'll be quite useful for getting information. And if we had a more complex strategy, we'd also be able to import our routing. Now, later on in the series, I'll actually be showing you how to do backtesting. And one of the real advantages of doing things this way is that your backtesting and your strategy development are totally seamless. And that can be so powerful for really creating yourself a cool little backtester that's going to be quite helpful. So here's what it looks like. In our strategy file, we always want to have a run strategy function that operates as the parent of all of the strategies. So no matter how complex your strategy is, we're going to grip it all up within this run strategy. In here, we're going to have our platform, symbol, and time frame. Okay, so those are the inputs. So we want to choose MetaTrader5, whatever symbol you use from MetaTrader5 and whatever time frame you want. Okay, and in here we also define what platforms this strategy is compatible with. So you may find that some strategies are compatible with Binance and not MetaTrader5, or maybe they're compatible with Coinbase and not Binance. In here, you're able to define what basically platform your strategy works with. So if you try to put in Binance here, it's just going to fail. That's really important because it allows you to kind of put in some really common error checking for what you want to do. And obviously if the platform is not in the platform that you've allowed, then it doesn't work. When we return the signal, we're actually going to be returning three components. So we have our decision, we have our entry, and we have our exit. That's quite important because when you go to make a trade, which we'll be covering in future episodes, we want to know what our stop loss and our take profits are going to be, even if we're using a trailing stop and a trailing take profit, which I'll show you about. We're going to go ahead, and you should be quite used to this function. That's what we were previously using to display on our terminal. So we go ahead and get our data. So we use our helper functions, get data function, platform, symbol, and time frame. Now this strategy is a little bit silly. All it does is basically says if the price has gone up, buy. If the price has gone down, sell. I don't recommend that you use this as a real strategy with real money ever. It's really, honestly, just to demonstrate how this works. So I'm going to define it here. So we get the last row and the second to last row. Okay, if the second to last close is greater than the current close, then buy. Set a entry point at 1.1% of the price and an exit point at 1.2. Sorry, set the entry price 1% above the current price and the close exit 2% above. Okay, and then do the opposite if the price is going down. So not a great strategy at all. We'll also be adding in our stop loss prices later on as we start to build more complex strategies, but this is just to get started. Once you've built that strategy, and you can find all of the code on the GitHub, we just plug it straight back into the file we were in, which is our strategy router here. You can see that if we choose test strategy, it's just going to route to that test strategy.run strategy. And all of it will just feed all the way back into the user interface, which will allow us to get to this point here. How good is that? In the next episode, we're going to continue developing this concept. I can't wait to see you there.